Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm your host, Kevin Castley. Thank you for tuning in tonight. So tonight I just wanted to talk about the need for more people on our side to be doing YouTube. Now, in the wake of some of the debates that I did recently, I did receive some constructive feedback, and I appreciate that. And some people, pointed out that I could, for example, draw more upon historical examples, whatnot, etc. The problem is that, for one, I'm not a historian by any means. To the extent that I've taken any sort of history, it's, it was mostly focused around Russia, for example, and I more cover North Korea history just in my own time. Now, obviously, people are limited in their free time in terms of what they're actually able to study, for example. And I can't do everything, and I can't be, knowledgeable on everything. And I think it's important that we have other people on our side in the hawk community from Twitter, etc., that take upon the charge to actually, come out here and debate. Because the thing is, for me, like, I basically at this point, more or less, the main figure at this point, because Reese doesn't produce content too often. Jay hasn't really uploaded much in a while. So, whereas I'm doing debates all the time and whatnot. So I appreciate constructive feedback to try to up my debate game. But on the other hand, recognize that, it's all well and good to criticize and say I could do better here or better there. And that's true. And that's true, right? We can always improve. But I mean, it would at some point be better for us to also recognize that we do need more hawks. We do need more people, especially knowledgeable people, to come out here and debate the cringe mongers too. Because I can keep debating them, right? But I mean, one person is one person. And, there are people in our community that are more knowledgeable on certain areas in the world than I am and ever have been. And if you are out there and you would be interested in becoming a YouTuber and taking up the charge and everything as well, it could take, months, if not years to get very far in terms of subscribers, right? It could take months to get to 100 subscribers. But I'll tell you this, if you're out here and you want to basically add to the hawk pill on YouTube, I will promote the hell out of your content and try to get you up to 100 subs way faster than it would take normally, for example. So that's the deal there, because we need more debate me bros on our side, right? I mean, that's one of the issues. That's really one of the issues with the foreign policy hawks and stuff in general, is that there aren't very many of us that are, down to debate the other side. And the other side uses that to essentially say, well, they're too scared. They can't really argue their ideas. They need to hide behind offices, or they need to hide behind, academic lecture rooms, that sort of thing. They can't really actually debate in the public square. That's the argument that everybody from the ANCAPs to the ANCOMs will make against our side. And I think it would be more useful. I think it would be helpful if we had more people out there that would also get into, debating these sorts of issues. Because for the most part, the internet, online spaces in general, have been completely surrendered to our opponents and the opponents of the West. And that's a problem, right? So, I mean, obviously, I call this channel the home of the hawks. And it's true. We're like the big one where we do all the live streams, and we always have or we often have a ton of people on, and we get expertise from different people in our community. But I would prefer to see more channels like this. I would prefer to see not even just like this, but channels in their own right. I mean, we have Net7, so big ups to Net7. Net7 has gotten into YouTube and Twitch. We've had Kanzik recently. Kanzik's here tonight, so Kanzik's got a new channel. or he's got, I guess, his first YouTube channel. And definitely be sure to go and subscribe to him. But I'll tell you, we could definitely use more assistance. And now what I will say is I appreciate Net7 because he actually does debate people. He's, even though he's a relatively small channel to start out with, he's debating people way earlier in his channel growth than I did, for example. I didn't really kind of become a debate me bro until like late last year, whereas he's already on the debate game right from the beginning, and he's destroying the isolationists and everything, and it's based. And we need more people like that because they have tons of people on their side. Seriously, they've got Sargon of Akkad, they've got Vosh, they've got Shoe on Head type people. I'm not actually sure if Shoe really does debates or whatnot these days because I don't watch her channel. I'm just aware that she's like a big meme and stuff, but she's irritating, grating. I don't feel like listening to her. They've got, of course, people like Philosophy Tube. They've got people like Hakeem. They've got people such as Nick Fuentes. They've got people, who else comes to mind? Well, obviously, some of the smaller YouTubers, too. All the guys that I've debated recently all had anti-war talking points. They all had Ron Paul style talking points. Ron Dumber Than Jake Paul style talking points. Uncle Thomas is down to debate people. And the thing is, and I always say to these guests that come on, I usually say to them, well, I appreciate you, having the courage to come here and debate me, somebody that like you disagree with and everything and all that kind of stuff. And, it's good because there are definitely some people, they're like Ian Stevens type people and Jack Posobiec type people that are scared to debate me. But for the most part, our opponents are totally down to debate. And their confidence in debating, even though they're wrong, makes them look right to the people that are on the fence. Because you have to keep in mind that on the internet and online spaces, most people aren't content creators the way that I am, or that Vosh is, or that Nick Fuentes is. They are spectators, and they view the debate culture in part kind of like sports, and everybody kind of wants to be on the winning side, right? There are a couple things in human psychology. People like to feel like they're the underdogs. That's part of it. But people also like to feel like they're on the winning side. And people in general would prefer to hang around people that they see as winners than people that they see as losers. And so those of us, or not of us, but those of our opponents who exude the most confidence to debate come across as winners. They come across as, well, they must be right. Look at how confident they are to debate. Vosh is always down to debate. Sargon's always down to debate, all this kind of stuff. It gives you the impression that, well, they're all against the Iraq War. They're all against having any sort of humanitarian interventionist approach anywhere. Well, that must be right. That must be right. And then look at the neocons. Look at the Hawks. They never really debate or anything. So they must be wrong. They must be scared to be challenged by those speaking truth to power, right? And it's so dumb because they're not right. They're actually wrong. They're totally wrong. They just have a monopoly on online spaces. And that's because we've got people out here that will basically kind of say things like, well, it'd be a lot of work, take a lot of time, a lot of energy. And that's true. It definitely would. But at the same time, do we really want to continue this public image that the Hawks can't debate? Because I'll tell you right now, I will 100% debate 10,000 more of these people if they challenge me. Absolutely. It's just a matter of time, right? And I will shut them down to the best of my abilities. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that so far. But there are people out there that know a lot more than I do. There are people out there that have different talents. There are people out there that have different styles that could add to our community. And I think that it'd be better to have more channels on our side than fewer, personally. And And I'll say this, I'd rather have more channels on our side and have fewer subscribers at this channel, but more subs altogether in our community than just be the home of the Hawks where everybody on our side goes to watch and have more subscribers. Because I don't want to be in this alone. You know what I'm saying? I can do it. And big ups the community for supporting me and everything. And compensating me for the debates. I really appreciate that, because they can be exhausting and irritating, hearing the same line over and over and over again by people who think it's like a winning line when in reality it's total cringe. But the thing is, I can only debate one person each night anyway. Imagine if we had like 10 people with YouTube channels that were all hawkish and down to debate and stuff. We could technically be debating like 100 different losers every week across our community instead of me doing at most 7. But I'm not really going to do 7 because I want to have a few streams dedicated to other stuff like drama or the news or random entertainment stuff. So I think that it would be a good thing for people to consider, perhaps, it doesn't need to be any sort of aspiration to be like a job on your end or anything. But, if you are somebody out there and you're disappointed with my debate performance, for example, and you're in our general worldview, you're in our foreign policy sort of persuasion, what I would encourage is offer all the constructive criticism you got to me and give me advice on how I can do better. But also consider getting into the ring yourself and doing debates so that we can have more champions on our side to shut down the slew of the brainlet brigades. Like, you got to understand, these people keep coming. These people are nonstop, and they all have the same dumb talking points too. I mean, we've seen on 3 separate occasions just in the last couple of weeks, yeah, but when are you joining the military, though? As if that is a logical argument at all. It's like, oh, you have an opinion on crime, but you're not a police officer. So is your opinion on crime valid? I mean, this can go on and on and on. And I'll shut them down each time. But again, it would be better if we had more people on our side to also get into the debates. And I'm not saying like, 2v2 or whatever. I mean, seriously, like imagine if we had like 6 channels like this that debated these people. You could technically have like 3 or 4 debates that you could watch each night with people in our community destroying the brainlet brigades. How based would that be? And I appreciate Kanzik for stepping up and starting a YouTube channel. I appreciate Net7, of course. Everybody go subscribe to both of those people. And Reese is doing content again now, And we do the weekly Ghoul Gang Rising show where we dunk on the worst foreign policy takes of the last week. So I'm going to get to the chat now, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So we got Kanzik, Round and Brown. We got Arthur here. Kanzik says, I can do a video exposing the truth about Mujahideen blowback, since there's so much that even people in this community don't know. Okay, awesome. The isoloids have an unfair inherent disadvantage. Well, I think they have an advantage online because, like I said, they have confidence. They basically have the Dunning-Kruger effect. They're so dumb, they don't know what they don't know, so they think they're smart. And they learn Michael Moore said, "We're bad." So now they feel very confident to parrot that talking point on online spaces. And it makes the average viewer who might be on the fence, could go with our side, could go with their side. It makes them just take their side all the time because they see those people as the only ones that are down to debate. Yeah, Kanzik says, all isoloids have to do is virtue signal and spout common myths. Hawks have to fact check and have sources and shit 100% of the time. Yeah, that's the other thing. They could just do some hacky virtue signal thing about, yeah, but people died, man. And what do we have to do? Well, we can't exactly virtue signal because unfortunately, humanitarian interventionism is not seen as a virtue. It's seen as, oh, but that's their culture, man. And who are you to tell Saddam that he can't do what he's going to do? So, yeah, you would think saving people from a tyrant would be a virtue and that we could virtue signal too. But no, because even appeals to emotion on our side are immediately met with, yeah, but those people don't matter. Whether it's the alt-right who regards those people as brown and therefore they don't care about them, or it's the far left who regards those people as, well, that's a different country's sovereignty, man. Who are you to tell their leader what to do, man? They don't care. They don't care. So it's not even a really effective virtue signal, unfortunately, right now, because the internet has become so poisoned with this nihilistic disregard for human life. Additionally, you could talk about how security is a virtue. I mean, obviously, we all want to be safe. Nobody wants their family to be in danger. But try making an appeal to security on the internet right now. What's going to happen? People are going to say, oh, what? Do you work for the military industrial complex, man? As if wanting to fight terrorism is bad, and as if wanting us to be vulnerable is good. It's so freaking pathetic. And yet, show me another channel out here that's willing to debate these stupid talking points. Seriously. Like, there might be another channel on YouTube that's doing this kind of shit that I don't know about. And in which case, tell me their name and I'll try to get in touch with them and, publicly recognize them, try to give them credit and stuff. But I don't think they exist. I really don't think they exist because all the brainlet brigades come here. They all come here to challenge me to debate. They don't challenge other people to debate from what I've seen. Arthur says, we are here for you, Kevin. Thanks, dog. Anyway, I don't really have too much else to offer here in terms of what I wanted to say tonight. Again, I don't want this to mean like, oh, well, I'm upset that people are criticizing me or whatever. No. Straight up, I appreciate it. I literally watch my own debates after they've aired, Like, I was watching my debate with Daniel the other day for two reasons. One, so that I can get highlight clips, and it usually takes a few weeks for me to get around to that because I'm super busy. But I also watch the debate so that I can watch and see, ooh, I could have said something better there. Or, oh, I could have countered him better here, so that I can try to up my performance. I'm always trying to become a better debater, right? So I don't want this to be seen as like, oh, well, I don't appreciate the criticism or whatever. But I got to keep it real to people. I don't have that much free time at all. I work all the time, and then I get here and I do the show, and then I have to schedule debates and everything. And it takes a lot of energy and everything. And I'll tell you this straight up. Once I'm able to do this as a full-time job, I'll be able to dedicate a lot more time to getting actual research and figures and stuff. I know one set of criticisms that I received recently was that I should be like Destiny and have facts and figures at the ready and like a doc sheet every time and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wait, like there are weeks when I'll work 60 hours and then I stream every day and I do pre-recorded videos and I'm on Twitter and everything. And I've obviously got to like clean my apartment and have some degree of a social life and everything. I simply don't have time to do that. And it's an advantage that our opponents have because many of our opponents are able to do this as their full-time job and actually make a lot of money at it. So, for example, you have Vosh. He has admitted to making six figures. Now, Vosh is a communist. Let that sink in. We have Hassan Piker, for example. We have Sargon of Akkad. We have Nick Fuentes. All of these people make a fabulous amount of money doing this. And so they're able to dedicate basically all of their time to their content and to upping their their game. Now, I would argue, given that and how piss poor a lot of their research even is to begin with. So, for example, Vosh, oftentimes the extent of his research is he'll just cite some dubious academic publication, but then coast on the fact that it was peer reviewed by 4 other communists. and so therefore I guess he wins or whatever. Often, like Nick Fuentes doesn't do sources. The dude doesn't believe in dinosaurs, for example. However, they have the means that they could do it. Whereas for me, even if I wanted to, say, devote 20 hours a week to research, I don't have that amount of free time to do it, for example. So, however, once I'm able to do this as a full-time job, then I would be able to take a few hours a day and actually focus on research. So that's another advantage that our opponents have, is that there is no neocon or hawkish type YouTuber that is so big that they can do it full time. There are tons of communists, tons of ANCAPs, tons of neo-Nazis, alt-righters, etc., what have you, that do social media as a full-time thing. So that's an advantage that the anti-war people have, right? And that's just kind of inherent to how this sort of thing works, because you have to pay bills. And if you ask me what's more important, paying bills to survive or doing more research, well, if I can't pay the bills to survive, then I can't do the show at all, and I can't even show up for the debate. So obviously, meeting food expenses, for example, comes first, right? So, and that's another thing. Another advantage that the people on the other side have, people like Vosh, for example, is that they often tend to be pretty wealthy. So like Vosh is like a son of Beverly Hills wealth, for example. For me, like I'm working class. My family's always been dirt poor, for example. So that's another disadvantage that we have on our side too. So is that basically everybody in our community, work regular jobs, whereas our opponents don't. So that's another thing for context here. But I'll tell you this. I'm 100% happy to keep on debating. And I'm going to keep on debating and everything. And you keep on sending me constructive criticism. And I will try the best to incorporate the stuff that I think makes sense and that's a valid criticism to try to improve my game. But I'm telling you, man, at some point, we got to have more people get in the ring. And this isn't me saying like, oh, I'm done with debating or whatever. No. It's actually the opposite. I'm going to keep debating, but you can't expect me to be perfect every time. If you got a ton of criticisms or whatnot and everything, especially from, say, a research angle or whatnot, I would be ecstatic if we could have more people with different backgrounds focused on different regions of the world that aren't just North Korea or Russia that could get in here and debate the brainlets too. That'd be based. So, and like I said, if you decide that you want to get into YouTube and you're hawkish and everything, I will promote the hell out of your channel and try to get you up to 100 subs as soon as possible. Instead of like for me, where basically it took me a long time to get even to 100 subscribers, for example. So I'm going to take a look at the chat. Oh, we got Jay here. Yeah, Jay's here. And we got Reese as well. You need to get Willy Wong on the podcast. Oh, yeah, we'll get Wong soon enough. Yeah. The Wong is never wrong. Oh, man. Carry a big wrench. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's about everything that I wanted to say in terms of what I had kind of on my mind. So at this point, I'm going to essentially send out a couple invites, see if people are down to come on for a little bit. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up very shortly. Anyway, so I have been doing the debates. So, and we have been taking a lot of dubs on the debate me bro front. But like I'm saying, I wish we had more debate me bros. Our opponents have a ton of debate me bros. Like they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Seriously. I mean, because I listed a bunch of high profile people, for example, like Sargon, Vosh, those types of people. But there are thousands of debate me bros on their side that might have like 1,400 subs or 1,100 subs or 15,000 subs. And most of those channels we might not even be aware of. I didn't know Liberty Lockdown was a thing until he got into touch with me as a result of this drama, for example, with Ace Archist. And they're all down to debate, and they're all dead wrong on their foreign policy takes. So, okay, we got Reese joining tonight. Okay. How's it going, Reese?
The donks is never wrongs.
Yeah, it never wrongs, never wrongs. So we got to get Willy Wong on for Saturday, I think.
Yeah, he was. It was in one of the chats. He was expressing interest before. So, but he's not on Twitter. We have to like send him an email or something.
Discord. I always invite him through Discord.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we probably won't get him on this time because it's a little short notice, but we'll get him on soon enough. Plus, we're kind of this next stream we're gonna do is gonna be it's gonna be a whopper based on the things I found.
Yeah, I've actually found one thing that perhaps we could talk about. I'm not sure,
Oh yeah,
how we compare. But I was gonna say, just to kind of tease this to the audience, there was a vote recently up in Canada, and everybody voted to. You heard about it. Yeah, everybody, every party, like conservatives, liberals, NDP, far left, far right, everybody. Well, we don't really have a far right in Canada, but fortunately, but everybody, regardless of their party affiliation, recognized what China's doing as a genocide, except, and even the Liberal Party, except for Justin Trudeau and his cabinet abstained, which is the most pathetic disgrace because the bill didn't even mean we had to go to war or sanction them or anything. It was simply an acknowledgement that what was going on is formally genocide. This is Justin Trudeau, the guy who does SJW virtue signaling all the time about residential
come on,
schools.
Kevin. It's just the prime minister and his cabinet.
But
Who cares what they
party,
think?
even his own party could recognize it. They all voted to, but the prime minister can't because it would upset Xi Jinping.
Yeah, no, it was a completely symbolic, basically means nothing vote. And I mean, even then people were complaining about it. So that's how I found out about that even happened, really, was
that it would antagonize China.
I mean, what are they going to do even? It doesn't, it's stupid.
Yeah.
It really is. I guess they're afraid of some internal retaliation, maybe.
Yeah. No, they're afraid of money, basically, because there's a lot of business done between the two countries. But Arthur's asking what happened to Kraut. Well, Kraut makes content. I've been in contact with Kraut over the last few months. He's actually an incredibly busy dude, but he has the complete opposite policy when it comes to his content style than I do. And I was discussing this with him. Whereas for me, I'm focused on pumping out, try to aim for 60 videos a week or a month rather. And I'll say straight up, yeah, not all of them are perfect and I'll make mistakes in videos and stuff. Whereas with Kraut's on the other end, he tries to constantly make his stuff better and better each time. And it takes him months to produce even a single video. So we have opposite styles, but Kraut's still around, absolutely still around. But, and you can go and check out his recent video that he did on the Mexican-US border. That was an interesting one. But Kraut, Kraut's kind of in the hot community, kind of. But it's not necessarily like his big sort of thing, interventionism. Kraut's more kind of, I think, focused at this point on being more or less a social media educator on geopolitics and stuff and history and everything. So,
yeah, he kind of has his own circle more than anything. And, he's been doing it professionally for much longer than anyone else in the circle. So, this is kind of a stretch. I wonder if we could get him on the show. I think we probably could at some point in the future.
Oh, I think we could, because he said that he still wants to do the interview with me, but he mentioned that his internet will be better around April to do it. But maybe we could get him on in April. Who knows?
Yeah, we've got time. It doesn't, these things don't have to happen right away. That's the thing about the internet, because you can pretty much be guaranteed that people will be around in some capacity. So, especially someone like Kraut, who it's, as far as I know, it's like his only source of income.
Oh, that's not true. I don't want to dox him or anything, but he has a full-time job. So.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. Like, you
Yeah,
got
well, that's actually not too surprising. I mean, there's not too much money to be made off of. I mean, if you wanted to make money off of AdSense and you took long breaks between each upload, you would need to have videos with millions of views. And I don't know if Kraut has a video with even over 1 million views.
Oh, I think his one on China and Trump does, because he's had like members of the U.S. I think even like he said that member of Congress got in touch with him over that or something. If I go to Kraut, I'm pretty sure some of his videos have over 2 million views. Let's see. America's Foreign Entanglement has 600K. How Vodka Ruined Russia has 2 million. Oh yeah, Trump's Biggest Failure on China. That one has 3.2 million. So, but again,
fair enough.
Are staggered out every few months or so. Now, for reference, in the last year and a half of this channel, I have 107,000 views. So in total, so that's an insane amount of views, even if you're not making content. Like guaranteed, he's getting more views per day right now, even though it's been weeks since his upload. That I've got. Like I've gotten like 1,000 views today. He's probably gotten more than 1,000 views, and he hasn't uploaded in 3 weeks. And I've gotten 2 videos today. So
the audience can be so fickle, though. I think it's good advice for the most part if you're going to be a content creator to have another source of income just in case. Yeah. Because
okay, 6,500 views just today. So he got almost 7 times as many views as me, and he hasn't uploaded in weeks. That's insane. Like
that's pretty good.
Damn.
I'm not sure if demonetization affected his channel at all, though.
Yeah,
it's a lot of political content is the ads are limited. It really depends. There's no real rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, no, I think the thing with Kraut is and in general with monetization, I think it's kind of amazing that him and you, I think, are both monetized, considering the nature of the content, right? But I mean, for Kraut's space of support is on Patreon. I believe he's over $5,000 per video, but that sounds like a lot of money. But he averages one video 4 times a year, so 20,000 ain't bad. But you can't exactly live on that. So
no, but I'm sure Germany has a lot of they've got a lot more to fall back on in terms of social support. The videos, I am monetized. I don't really make a whole lot though, because that's just been so neutered over the last couple of years. And the real problem with my channel is it's hidden in the algorithm. It was basically determined like, oh yeah, this channel has problematic content, and it doesn't get highlighted for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while since I heard things like this, but people were constantly complaining to me back in the day about being unsubscribed, about having the notification bell go off. And that's usually what happens to channels that get blacklisted.
Yeah, for sure. They take her around with that stuff. And it's unfortunate. Whereas, they will promote some of the bigger people, though. Like Hassan Piker's stuff gets promoted. That dude's on Twitch still, for example, which is insane. But, it's the sort of thing that I was kind of saying before you came on, Reese, how like our opponents have so many debate me bros on their side. So people think that their side must be right if they're watching on the fence because they see all these guys willing to debate. And they don't necessarily see the other side of things, because there aren't too many like hawkish debate me bros out there. So in general,
even then, I that feels overblown. I feel like a lot of them are not willing at all to engage in a conversation. Yeah, you'll get the odd person who, but a lot of the people who debate you are like nobodies who basically just want to shout into the wind. it's very rare where, like, I don't remember any time where Vosh debated a neocon.
No.
And I'm sure there have been offers.
I'm not sure there's ever been an offer, though.
There had to have been somebody.
Because Vosh calls Charlie Kirk a neocon, for example. He calls Ben Shapiro a neocon, for example. So,
well, based on that, I'm sure he's debated a neocon because he's debated somebody.
Yeah. Well, he defines, like, he uses the language of neocon to refer to anybody who's not like alt-right, but right of center, basically. So I know he's stupid. He's totally stupid.
You're dumb, bro.
Yeah. I mean, at least with people like Kyle, they use the term neocon to mean loves war, whereas Vosh isn't even that smart enough to know that it has like a foreign policy connotation. For him, he just sees you've got neo-Nazis and you've got neocons, which is kind of funny because it means that he winds up thinking like everybody who's not Nick Fuentes is a neocon. So,
well, it's about time he included Nick Fuentes in the neocon list, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's ever actually debated Nick Fuentes, though. But would it be interesting is if at some point Vosh and I were to debate. That could happen. So.
Oh, jeez. That'd be something.
I mean, I debated, like, okay, so Vosh is like big friends with Dylan Burns, and I debated Dylan Burns. Vosh always says that he goes to Dylan Burns for foreign policy. So if if Vosh is in preparation for a debate against me, and he's in contact with Burns, because Vosh has admitted time and time again that he knows like shit all about foreign policy. That's why he watches Dylan Burns. How would I lose that debate? Like, because I beat Burns. So if I beat the guy that Vosh is getting information from, then how does Vosh stand a chance? Like, yeah, Vosh is bigger. Vosh argues social issues all the time. Vosh even admitted he doesn't know anything about the stock market. So he can't even really argue economics very well. But
what are Vosh's credentials besides being in a criminology class one time?
Well, he did a degree in sociology, and he also said he had a background in criminology because he took a course. Sociology.
Sociology, that could mean anything.
Yeah. Well, he basically he learned that things are problematic, and he learned that well, I mean, he's talked about his sociology degree a lot and said that it gives him the ability to basically analyze things in society and all this kind of stuff and everything.
Okay.
But, like, he says, well, I did a degree in sociology, so I can analyze what's problematic here. He'll say that kind of stuff and everything, and it's like, okay, but
there's a problem. I don't have any solutions. I can just point out problems.
Yeah, his solutions are the problem, though. Like, his solutions are straight up problematic because his solutions, even by his own admission, he said would require a violent revolution. But he's opposed to totalitarianism. But how does he think that a violent revolution wouldn't result in a dictator seizing power? Is the problem.
Good luck avoiding that. It was funny because it reminded me after the what happened on Capitol Hill. I saw a lot of the more prominent commie users on Twitter. They were saying, I don't really feel comfortable making fun of this because in the future, I would hope that we would replicate something similar.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be people like you. It's not gonna be a bunch of twinks. It's gonna be the guy who put his feet up on Pelosi's desk, basically. Those are gonna be the people who actually accomplish something.
In the United States, for sure. That's the thing, is I think a lot of these guys are really upset because they wish they had the equivalent to like what the QAnon crowd has. Like, they wish that the American left was as, I guess, insurrectionary as the American right in that sense. Like, they're jealous, basically.
Oh yeah, they're real jealous. It doesn't work. Let me put it this way. there are far too many checks and balances on the left for this to be allowed. People on the left, a lot of people on the left, are very entrenched in their careers, in the institutions in which they work and oversee. They like wine. They like brunch. They don't like going outside.
The champagne socialist. Well, I guess the left is a broad term, though. Like, I think when most people kind of think of the left, especially in like online political culture, they're thinking of people like Vosh. But technically speaking, I guess Hillary Clinton is considered left. Like, I think of her as center right, but I don't know.
No, she's left wing, but she's left wing in the same way that I'm left wing. It is a very and by Canadian standards, I'm sure it would be different. Canada is a significantly more left wing country than the United States, but I don't know. I'm kind of the opinion, really, that everyone to a degree is kind of left wing, unless you're a total reactionary, retrograde, Kyle Frank douche. You're kind of left wing. Like I see it as, if you're pro secularism, pro gays, anti-racist, historically you're pretty left wing. Like, you are significantly left wing compared to what society has been for a long time.
Well, that's true, but I think the problem with that, though, is that it kind of ignores the political nuances of the current era. Whereas you could, by that definition, say, for example, that somebody like Dick Cheney is left wing in a sense of compared to the last 5,000 years. He's definitely left wing. He supports liberal capitalism. But in the context of our current era, like if you compared him to Charlemagne, or you compared him to Ivan the Terrible or something, he's going to be left wing because he doesn't believe in an absolute monarch. But I think those labels are more important in the current era, where we've already settled on so much that historically was left wing, whereas now both sides agree, with the exception of some radicals, that is like that makes sense. This is something that the reactionaries over at the Politicrats channel were kind of they were criticizing my sort of viewpoint, or the viewpoint of people like John McCain and stuff. They would criticize them and saying, well, they're just going the speed limit, and they're going to be where the progressives are, like where Ilhan Omar is in 30 years, and this sort of thing, as if to say, like, and this is the thing.
I'd consider her to be deeply conservative, though.
That's
so true. I think she's a really bad example.
That's true. They also use like AOC as an example, but I would say this, which is that this criticism that neocons or whatever are just progressives going the speed limit. That's kind of their criticism. I don't actually think that that's a good criticism, because what they're essentially implying there is that any change that's happened is inherently bad. And some of these people are straight up reactionary, so it makes sense that they would think that. But for me, I think that a ton of what progressives have done over the last 100 years is worth preserving. But I can also recognize that this radical approach of, trying to make white people feel guilty just because of their skin that they were born into, I can be against that. Like, I don't know. Like, it's tough because
obviously
they would say, oh, yeah, but in 30 years, you're just going to be where they are. But I don't believe that. I really don't believe that I'm just going to move with the times. If they became like the predominant ideology and everybody has to feel guilty over their skin color or whatever, I would never get on board with that. But I don't want to go back, like the meme is that these guys want to go back to the 1950s. No, some of those guys want to go back to the 1450s. So I don't want to do that. Like, I don't know. It's different
cultural issues for different generations. If you have somebody like Mitt Romney promoting Black Lives Matter, I don't inherently assume that he's promoting some anti-white agenda. I disagree with him largely. But at the same time, you could also probably find me a case that was being protested, and if it were being protested in a peaceful way, I could get behind it to a degree, but I still would be, well, I'd inherently be a little uncomfortable associating with the movement just based on its history, and also because I think the movement is by default segregationist in nature of its concerns. I think that some people have very noble intentions and they get swept up in things that they don't fully understand. But going up, there's going to be a whole new generation of people who are they have different ways of thinking about this. They're going to have less reason to be guilty because they were not alive during times in which racism or the KKK were predominant. They just weren't. You're going to get people with now granted, you're going to have a lot of clueless people too, who, because they don't have any experience with racism, they assume that everything is racist. But I don't know. I really feel like it's going to be more difficult to guilt people in the future because there's not much to guilt them with. I think the further you move away from Jim Crow and the slavery period, it just becomes far less of an issue. But then again, yeah, we can debate that. But the question is, like, does that make you right wing? Like, does it make you right wing to be anti-BLM? I'm anti-BLM and I'm not right wing. And there are plenty of people, I think, who are like that. They're not always the most vocal, but it's clearly not an issue. You can tell when it's an issue that people don't necessarily prioritize.
Yeah. I think the point that you made, though, I mean, I think it's a valid one about how everybody is to some extent left wing. But you could also say, I mean, people could flip that, though, and say that everybody who's not, an ANCAP or an ANCOM would to some extent be right wing because they believe in having like a status sort of institution. I mean, that like Vosh uses that distinction. He sees statism as right wing and anarchism as left wing, for example.
Well, that's just obviously false because there have been left wing governments.
Yeah, that's true. But
he denies it. He denies that those states were left wing. But doesn't he think that Castro is left wing?
Castro is the exception, which that's why I would like to debate him on, or like, even if that's not the focus of the debate, if I ever sit down with Vosh, I just want to ask him about that, because I've seen streams where he's asked to condemn Castro and he's like, well, Castro's different than Stalin and everything. And it's like, as far as I can see, the only difference is that Castro didn't have as many people to terrorize as Stalin did. So yeah, anarcho-communism is just an inherently stupid movement, but it's that hypocrisy that would be worth a debate. I doubt he's going to do it, or if he does it anytime soon. Mm-hmm. But I think we said this, I believe, the last time we streamed. I do find his posturing as an anti-tanky to probably be the most annoying thing about him. I would agree.
He's obviously a tanky. But he's like, I'm the good tanky. I'm against these other tankies.
No, that's right. That's right. Because he's against China. He's against the Soviet Union. He's against Albania, the Khmer Rouge, North Korea. But Cuba's different. And I'm sure if you were to ask him throughout Latin America, he would do apologetics for the Sandinistas. He'd probably do similar apologetics, for example, in perhaps even Yugoslavia. Not sure. I haven't seen him asked about that. But usually people think that you can get away with Yugoslavia a bit more, I guess, because Tito didn't kill anywhere near the amount of people as Stalin. But that's true for most of the dictators. Oh, and I'd be interested in asking him his opinion of who was that guy from Burkina Faso back when it was like Upper Volta or whatever, that they had a communist dictator too, that a lot of the anti-tankies see as like some revolutionary hero and stuff. But, I do think it's kind of obnoxious in a way, but like they would say,
extremely obnoxious.
but they would say, they would say to somebody like me, they would say, oh, but you claim to believe in democracy, but you've argued that the West was right to work with the Mujahideen and Pinochet and all that kind of stuff. They would say that. Whereas my argument is always that the point is on winning and then reforming the bad guys that you worked with. But they would say that that's hypocritical. So
how is that hypocritical?
Well, they would say that if you were truly committed to democracy, you would never consider working with like a brutal thug like Pinochet.
I'm also a pragmatist, though. Like, I'm realistic. I'm not a complete utopian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's what I've said about my stance on anti-theism. I personally am an atheist. I personally am an anti-theist. I recognize that the world is filled with religious people. The world is filled with religiously influenced governments. And sometimes you have to be willing to compromise and work with that in the hopes of in the future promoting secular states. And I think that that's been a rousing success when you look at deeply religious nations that have a significant exposure to the secular West. Their population does start to change over the time. The youth want a more secular state. They want a more liberal state. They want a more Western state. And I'd be very interested to see what happens, especially in the KSA in the next, 20 to 30 years or so. Because all those kids are going to grow up and take very prominent positions in the country.
Yeah, well, I think that that Saudi Arabia is moving in the direction of the UAE, and I think that Iran, in contrast, is, I mean, it's not exactly that they're going backwards. You can't go backwards. I mean, there was a woman who was set to be executed who died of a heart attack, and then they hung her body anyway to like prove a point. Like, these guys are barbarians, basically. Saudi Arabia, I think, will be past a lot of their barbarism within the next 30 or 40 years, as long as the U.S. stays in alliance with them. But cutting them off, antagonizing them, one, I think it could undermine the government that's there and weaken them to the point that the real radicals in their country take power and make an actual like full-out Islamic state, like a caliphate and stuff. Or it could turn them in a direction similar to Iran. But I think in general, I kind of wanted to get back to that point that you mentioned about like, left wing, how most people are kind of left wing and everything. I think that's true. But then, like, if it's tough because you kind of have to take it issue by issue. Like, what would you describe somebody who wants to basically move over to a negative income tax, but get rid of like excessive government bureaucracy, but still have a safety net? Because people like Vosh and stuff would say, well, that's like radical neoliberal right-wing austerity or whatever. But, because they want like, Sam Cedar is another one. Like, he opposes universal basic income because he wants a big state to do that. He doesn't want people to decide for themselves what to do with their money, for example.
Of course. Well, I wouldn't put it past Cedar to be against any liberty in any form, really. But I'd say it really depends on who you ask. But I'd say from my own perspective, if you're seeking to just, get rid of government spending for the sake of it, that's a fairly right-wing stance in most cases. If you are seeking to replace it with some form of socialization, then that's leaning more toward left-wing. I think that it's just a nice center-ish balance between the two. It's a moderate position. It's kind of the best of both worlds, really. And it's saying, look, we need to provide for people, but there is all this excessive government spending and we could do it in a better way. Here's how we're going to do it. I don't think it's a very right-wing position, though.
Oh, okay.
I really don't. I characterize right-wing economics as largely not caring at all about social programs, except for Social Security, but that's only because they have to. It's because it's the social program that applies to the tried and true voting demographic, at least in the United States.
Right.
But so I think they kind of got pigeonholed into that. But if they didn't have to do that, I think that they would, try much more fervently to pull the plug on that.
What do you make though of the idea? Like, I generally see when it comes to the negative income tax or UBI discussions, it tends to be people that are like definitively right-wing libertarians that are for negative income tax. And it tends to be people that are like classically left-wing that are against it because they make an argument that's based on the idea that people won't know what to do with their money. Whereas for me, I want to couple it with personal finance education in high school. But they'll the Sam Cedar types, the Vosh types and stuff. Like Vosh really hates Andrew Yang, for example, because he sees Andrew Yang as trying to gut the welfare system. Whereas I see Andrew Yang as trying to improve on something that's broken, But he would say it's a right-wing thing to do. Basically.
I think that's just a sign of the Overton window shifting significantly to the left. So you have people on the right who, I think that just a couple generations ago, people did not have the same economic hardships. The country was on a better upward swing. People in general were more prosperous. A paycheck would get you further. More people had their own property. More people were getting married. And so it kind of made sense for people to be content with that. Now you have a lot of people who are faced with more harsh economic realities. So you have people on the right more open to these typically left-wing, quote unquote, big government positions. And people on the left went really far left. And they saw the first sign of trouble and they wanted to turn to complete socialization. Opposition to Andrew Yang is just bizarre, really.
Well, to me, it makes sense because when I see a lot of these people, especially in Canada with the NDP, for example, they want to preserve even failing institutions that have the aesthetic of, left-wing sort of stuff, like big welfare, that kind of stuff. They want the government to do it. Now they'll say that you can't trust people to know what to do with their own money if you give them UBI or you give them a negative income tax, or as if they're on welfare, they have to be held more to account with it or whatever. Whereas the point that I always make about welfare is that if you actually look into it, it actually discourages people from working because you'll literally have your pay docked if you work. For example, if you're under welfare, that it creates a poverty cycle essentially. But they would definitely characterize it as a right-wing position to want to move towards a negative income tax or whatever. They, like Vosh has talked about how he just hates this like big tech billionaire like Elon Musk sort of thing, or Andrew Yang type stuff, where he basically
they hate successful people.
He basically sees it as this whole thing would just be a way to speed up automation and all this kind of stuff. Whereas for Yang talks about automation, but he talks about it in, a good thing if you can compensate those who lose from it. Whereas for Vosh and a lot of those people, I don't think they want the economy to progress at all, and it's kind of something that Tucker Carlson has in common, where I agree with him on not outsourcing to China, for example, but I do get the sense from him that he wants the economic capacity to kind of go back to what it was in the 50s, that he doesn't like the automation, whereas the automation in and of itself isn't problematic as long as you compensate some people who lost from it with some of the profits of what you have now, which you could do. But that's where the negative income tax goes in, or the UBI, where it's like, yeah, you lost your job, but we're way more productive now, so we can still make it so that everybody's better off and have an actual Pareto improvement. Whereas I think a lot of those guys, especially on the more left-wing side of things, they look at that and would say, all you're doing is basically the aesthetics of entrepreneurship and all this kind of stuff and everything, and they don't tend to like that very much. But I had one other question that I was going to ask, though, because it's like I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this one. It used to annoy me when people would call any interventionism like a right-wing sort of position, but it seems so ubiquitous that having a big military or having an interventionary foreign policy is just characterized as right-wing. How do you respond to that? Because there are left-wing hawks. It seems like they're rarer, but also there aren't that many right-wing hawks anymore. So
yeah, I mean, you'd have to take it up with a lot of the people you've been debating who are mostly right-wing and are not hawkish at all. I don't know what to really make of that, because again, I think that a lot of modern conservatives, 21st century conservatives, are heavily liberalized just by the state of the world. And I think that there are a number of people who are open to the idea. Unfortunately, it's often shrouded in political games where you'll have people be in favor of an intervention for strictly fulfilling some kind of domestic political, I don't know, just an attempt to own somebody. Like a lot of people kind of shifted toward intervention when Trump was president, and they were on the left, or at least they seemed to be open to the idea of intervention. So I don't know. I find the characterization that it depends on what you'd characterize as a hawk, because anytime I go into a thread, just a random thread filled with normies criticizing Trump, they're criticizing him for pulling out of Syria. They're criticizing him for appeasing Putin. These are the things that come up all the time. I would regard those as very hawkish talking points. Now, how far they would go on that, it really depends, because I don't want to just apply my own standard. I could very easily play like a purity game here and say, you can only be a hawk if you are in favor of starting at least 3 wars. No, I'm not going to do that. Because you're going to have these people who kind of echo these proto-hawk talking points who aren't actually in favor of starting any wars. And so you'll have a person who's critical of Trump appeasing Russia, who criticizes Trump for pulling out of Syria, but was also against the Iraq War. So it's very complicated in that sense. And then you'll have people who were in favor of the Iraq War. They liked everything Trump did for some reason, because they were Republicans then. They were Republicans during Trump, and they're still Republicans now. And now they're finding a way to criticize the Biden administration. So I would really want to move past kind of the partisan perspective, because that's when when someone's their deeply set principles are in the right place. And it doesn't matter who the president is. You can find, if you support a policy, you support a policy. It doesn't matter what letter is next, being stamped next to the policy, essentially. Yeah. I think that more people agree generally with us than you would think, though. I agree. It's just a matter of convincing them to get on board with some of the more ambitious endeavors, shall we say.
Yeah, no, I would say that I agree with that. But I guess that leads to, another question, which is like, I've done political compass tests and stuff like that. And I've done ones where it's almost a total bullseye, for example, where I'm like, what is it? The enlightened centrist meme, that kind of stuff. But what would you characterize? Like, would you characterize me as more left wing or right wing or a centrist? Because I kind of see you as like centrist with like maybe like slightly like left of center, that kind of thing. But
yeah, I feel like I feel like in a lot of ways I've become more left wing over the last couple of years, and even more recently than that. As for you, it's tough to say. I think that you're a hodgepodge. I think it really depends on the issue. You kind of mellow out more toward the middle, though. If I were even to characterize you as right wing, I wouldn't even call you center right. I'd call you right of center. Like you're I would barely consider you as right wing. Maybe you're more center right in Canada, but
Well,
for the United States, not too much really.
I guess that's a good point there, because when I identify myself politically, I'm comparing myself like to my country's political spectrum.
Kevin just wants to grill. Yeah, you're in the grilled center.
Well, like, look, in Canada, for example, like, to give you a sense of the political, like, I'll give you a sense of the political spectrum here and kind of how the Overton window is. So universal health care, for example, is something that all parties agree on. Not, debating or not having a debate around abortion is something that all parties agree on. And like, I'm pro-choice, for example, but like, even most conservative MPs don't want to have any sort of debate around that. Like, they see it as a settled issue. For example,
that depends if they. I think there's a difference between not wanting to risk it politically and what you might believe behind closed doors.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They very well could be more toward American conservatives on that issue, but they're just like, oh, look, I don't want to touch this because it's political suicide.
But in Canada, though, there are things like, if you want to sell dairy milk, you want to be a dairy milk farmer, you have to get like $1 million license and stuff. There's like all kinds of big barriers to entry to prop up the like existing sort of status quo and stuff. In a lot of ways, there's that's the case with a lot of stuff like taxis and everything. There are a lot of things in Canada. Like, for example, the tax rate, the average Canadian pays around 40% in taxes, for example. I would say that the Overton window in Canada, it's basically where Trudeau, I wouldn't say that he's the center or anything, but Trudeau kind of is the center in Canada. But Trudeau is objectively to the left of the Democrats in the United States. So
that's true. It'd be interesting to try to compile a useful global standard. Well, it'd have to be based on contemporary and historical politics to a degree. And that's what makes it extremely difficult. And obviously we've voiced our criticisms of the Trudeau government. And I mean, I think that I haven't really talked about it, but the healthcare situation in Canada is notoriously terrible.
Okay.
Like, because I'd go as far to say that. I mean, it was characterized as being an abuse of human rights a few years back.
Well, yeah. Well, we got a lot of people in the United States that virtue signal about Canadian healthcare and everything.
Yeah, they don't know anything about it. They haven't even read a Wikipedia entry on it.
Well, that's like neocons posting L's and stuff on Twitter. Well, one thing that I would say is that one of the big criticisms that you'll see from people these days about neocons and stuff online and everything is they basically say that, like, oh, well, neocons are like, progressives or whatnot. I would say that the areas that neocons are progressives on, like, for example, you got like, an anti-racism, for example, is a part of it. That's good. So,
but I do think that there's kind of an interesting debate of, at some point, something that was once considered as progressive and radical and really shook the cage, it becomes a very just, normal, almost conservative value that, like, yeah, that's just been here. That's just what we do. It becomes a tradition, so to speak. How long does it take for what was once a progressive position to be entered into the tradition of a given society? At what point is that a worthwhile factor in determining whether or not a political position is progressive or conservative?
Well, I think it matters what they're comparing it to. Like, a lot of the people that levy those sort of arguments, even if you had, say, an anti-racist policy for 1,000 years, they'd probably still regard it as progressive, because the tradition that they want to go to is like, oftentimes it's literal KKK stuff. So,
I think history should play more of a role to a degree, though. And I think based on that, you could almost, I'm not even saying that that's a standard anyone else is applying. I'm just applying it for myself. I think you could characterize hawkishness as being a conservative position because it's interesting in protecting the American way of life. So that's maybe why a lot of people see it as being a right-wing position. Any kind of policy that is explicitly saying we want to preserve the American culture, the American people lose their minds and say, oh my God, that's right-wing.
Well, like Kyle said it before, a ton of people, like even in my university, it was always regarded as like militarism and a defense of the military is an inherently what they would say is either right-wing or outright reactionary stance. And I think that's I think that is I don't agree with that, but I think it's a big thing in the culture where if you defend the Iraq War, for example, people are going to think you're right wing. Whereas I guess it's a little bit different these days, though, because most people on the right are opposed to the Iraq War now, and most people on the left are opposed to the Iraq War now. But I mean, I think that when it comes down to a lot of this stuff, though, I mean, you mentioned the idea of like protecting safety and all this kind of stuff. One thing that I was talking about earlier before you came on was how like the things that we could virtue signal on aren't even seen as virtues anymore. Like if you talk about national security, it's actually seen as like, oh, you're for the Patriot Act, you're for all this. So you're just for like the government, man, and stuff. Like if you have an appeal to emotion based on protecting people's kids and stuff, they're going to say that you're a bootlicker. And if you have an appeal to emotion based on saving people from tyrannies and genocide and stuff, they're going to say you're a Trotskyist who cares about people outside your own borders.
You like, care about people. What a cuck.
Like, yeah. So even the stuff that, like, they'll virtue signal all the time. They'll say, but bring the boys home. Like, the boys. Like, some of the boys got injured. That kind of thing. Like, we had some of the people that I debated recently say that, like Liberty Lockdown, virtue signal. He basically said, he's like, yeah, but what would you say, like, does it ever cross your mind about the people that were killed in the Iraq War as if millions of people weren't going to die if Saddam was left in power and his kid took over, that kind of stuff. But
those people weren't American.
Yeah, but they weren't American. But the thing is,
they don't count.
But the thing is, though, so he virtue signals, they all virtue signal. But even if I were to just try to virtue signal, they're just going to, like, anybody's going to take issue with an appeal to security or an appeal to humanitarian interventionism. Like, even if I was being disingenuous about it, for example, and say, for example, I didn't care about people in Iraq, but I used that as a virtue signal, they wouldn't even see it as a virtue signal. They'd say, oh, you want our kids to die for brown people, basically, right? Like somewhere else, which is stupid because it basically means that they try to monopolize virtue on their side, like anti-interventionism. Whereas in my view, I can't see there to be any virtue to it, even if you didn't care about any people outside your borders, because as 9/11 proved, even if you ignore the world's not going to forget that you exist. So, but
that was because America was meddling in the Middle East, bro.
Yeah, 1953. One of those guys brought up 1953.
See, they say the same things. They're NPC bots.
No, I know. So I was basically saying, like, I'm going to keep on debating these people, but I can only do as well as I can against them, and it'd be cool if we had more debate me bros in our community. But
yeah, I mean, it's fun. I don't think it's necessary, really, because I mean, just the content existing is a massive step in the right direction. Just to have another perspective available. And yeah, I mean, it's inevitable that you're going to get into tiffs with people you disagree with. And that's how people are going to be made aware of you, or just networking. Maybe not necessarily with your opposition, but among a larger pool of reasonable enough people. Like, what would be interesting is having someone like Dylan Meisner on the show.
Oh, yeah.
That would be interesting because we have our agreements and we have our disagreements. So if you kind of were in that kind of crowd, I think that's another good way to promote yourself. Probably even a better way to promote yourself than to just shill your channel to a bunch of people who hate you. And maybe like 2 of them will subscribe. And they'll be hate subscribers. But no, it really depends. People will say that. Like, oh, yeah, you won't debate. But, I mean, there's a lot of people who won't debate. We had to beg Ace Arcus to debate. There were those other, that Neocon L guy won't debate.
No, he won't debate. Well, you know who? Yeah, okay, Wyatt made a good point about this. Like, I keep on bringing up Ian Stevens because I'm not going to let that go. But Wyatt was basically saying, like, we should probably be talking more about Jack Posobiec. Because Jack Posobiec literally said,
"Oh yeah,
in Neocon anytime." Look, he's basically going to get away with this just because he's got a million followers or whatever. 100%, that guy owes me a debate. I believe I still have. Yeah, I still have it right here. He doesn't say, "Oh, over 700 subs." It's any, but he still got me blocked. He knows who I am, by the way. So
yeah, he's a coward. He won't do it.
That's so dumb, though. Like, so these guys...
He just wanted to act tough for 2 seconds, and then everybody bought it. And I think people just were like, this is how brain dead they were. They saw that, oh, neocons owned. Did any neocons respond to this? Nope. Okay, moving on.
Well, yeah, and then they just move on because they don't see the people that he's got blocked. Like, there's no function on Twitter to see who people are blocking. So they don't know that everybody that could have accepted it, most people didn't even know that he said that. And it was brought to my attention because people were like, oh, you should accept his challenge and stuff. Anyway, that guy owes me a debate. I'm going to keep talking about it. I'll talk about that.
And you're blocked, so you can't even, you have to do it through other people. That's so dumb.
Yeah, it's stupid. But this is the thing. Like, Jared Rappel did this too. He also said, happy debate any neocon anytime. And I accepted it. And then he said he unblocked me just so that he could reply and say that he wouldn't debate me because I'm in bad faith, and then proceeded to block me again. So he's another one of these tough guys who wants people to think he's tough, but blocks everybody he disagrees with. By the way, in case anybody's wondering how many people I've got blocked right now, I've had 0 people blocked all year. So I don't block people anymore. So
I block a lot of people, but then again, I don't remember the last person I blocked. So I'm barely on Twitter. I think that it would be interesting to explore the idea of kind of this perception that we are outnumbered, which I really think is just because people, the position that we are advocating for has been so thoroughly demonized that even if people are in favor of it, they're unwilling to come out about it for the most part, or they have other things that they prioritize and they would rather talk about that. They find that more interesting, which I don't even necessarily blame people for, because what's immediately happening around them or what immediately is going to affect them in their community may stand out as being more important than something that's happening half a world away. I understand that. This is a niche position for policy wonks and nerds for the most part. I'm fine acknowledging that. But I do wonder if during the time in which in the hawkish position in America was not hard to find at all, it was everywhere. It was widely encouraged and had people to defend it. I wonder if they didn't do enough in terms of messaging to build that as being, okay, this is going to be a principle going forward. It's going to last beyond Bush. It's going to last beyond the decade. It does feel like a lot of people who were hawks and are kind of residual hawks now, back then, they were just hawks because they were Republicans, really. It feels like politics have diversified in a way where now you can be a Democrat openly who has this more right-wing stance, or you can be a Republican who has this more left-wing stance. We're seeing a lot more crossover than we used to, or at least we're having more exposure to people who don't quite fit into a neat little box. They did a poll recently that said that most Americans, in this particular poll, I'd have to find it again, but they identified as politically homeless.
Yeah, no, I did hear about that, and I was just thinking, you know, the thing is, like, I used to call myself a centrist on Twitter, but I think one thing that I don't like about the label centrist is that there's a connotation that some people have of centrism, that a centrist just does, like, they take the middle ground between two issues on any issue. And for me,
they're basically Joe Manchin then.
Yeah, whereas for me, I've got objectively pretty left-wing stances on some issues, and on others, like a negative income tax, I would consider that to be a fairly right-wing stance, you know, where it's like literally going past the government bureaucracy at that point, you know. So like it balances out to be center, whereas you could also be centrist and just be not apathetic, but just not care one way or another on a bunch of stuff. Or you could be even more extreme. You could be like extremely far left on something, extremely far right on something, and it would balance out to be center. I don't know. Like, I find that centrism, it's not a very meaningful label anymore. So I don't really refer to myself.
We used to all make fun of it back in the day. It was a big meme. We always talked about armored skeptic centrism, where basically he didn't want to take a side. Well, then he started, for a period, he kind of LARPed as a right winger, but he's a Canadian, so his idea of being a right winger was kind of askew when he's trying to broadcast to Americans.
Well, here's the thing about, like, because I tell people are like some people are shocked to find out I live in Canada and stuff, but like that's public knowledge. Like basically where the Conservative Party is in Canada right now is it's not like Joe Biden, but it's kind of similar in some ways to Bill Clinton. You know,
Nice.
and like I would say that Joe Biden, he's not like Trudeau, but he's also to the left of where the conservatives are. I think he actually is the most progressive Democratic leader that they've had become president. But
yes,
but again, being right wing in Canada, you could still fall in left of center in American politics, which I guess that might describe me. I'm not 100% sure on that. But
I mean, ultimately, I don't think it matters. That's my current position. It doesn't matter to me. If what matters to me is if there's a position that I agree with. Oh, is it left wing or right wing? I don't want to play this game where it's like I, clutch my pearls. Oh my God, I just agreed with a right wing position. That means I'm a right winger.
Yeah,
it's over. Like, sometimes, I'll follow like a wide array of people. Sometimes I'll see an AOC post that I don't entirely disagree with. And I'm like, hey, that wasn't the worst thing you ever said. That was okay. Say more of that. Luckily, she kind of stopped touching foreign policy. Can't remember the last time she talked about that because she was garbage on that.
Well, I got hope for her. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit.
Well, she's moderated significantly, I think, in the last year or so.
Maybe this is going to be a bit of a hot take. I actually think that in 20 years, it's possible that AOC might become a liberal hawk. It's possible.
Well, yeah, she was speaking against the human rights abuses in China, which is more than Trudeau's doing.
That pissed off so many people on her side because obviously Jimmy Dore called her a right winger over that. Kyle said that she's gone to the right now. All this kind of stuff because they define left wing as like the Noam Chomsky thing, and they define right wing as the evil George Bush thing, basically. But
stuck in the past.
Yeah, but with her, the thing about AOC is that AOC on economics is goofy. She really doesn't have a good grasp of economics. On foreign policy, she's also goofy, but I would say I don't think she's malicious about it. I think she actually means well, and that's why I think she'll actually become more hawkish down the road, because when she's aware that inaction is what causes suffering and not action, you know?
Those are the people I have hope for. The people who are not malicious fifth columns. If they're just like fifth columns by happenstance, there is absolutely a chance they'll shift over, depending on the political circumstances.
I wouldn't ever characterize her as a fifth column. I would say that at most she was ever a useful idiot. Ilhan Omar, I would say, is more of a fifth column. I think with AOC, AOC was never actively trying to undermine the U.S. I don't think of her as somebody who was necessarily, and I don't know, maybe somebody can find a quote or something. I don't remember any quotes from AOC that were praising Putin or Xi Jinping or anything. The way that the fifth
actually, there's a funny story about that, because basically, it came about. I don't remember when this was. It was a while ago, but AOC, she either liked or retweeted Rania Khalek, who we've been talking about. We've been talking some mad shit about in the chat, which is funny. Yeah. We'll tell the story about her in a minute. But so AOC liked this tweet, and people were freaking out, rightfully so. And they basically were adding AOC. They were spamming AOC. Fix this. This is unacceptable. She is a paid Kremlin puppet. Why are you liking tweets from her? And AOC took the like back, and Rania Khalek got pissed. It was probably one of the funniest things that ever happened on Twitter, honestly.
Oh man, yeah, that's a violation of my free speech, I guess.
Oh my God, they've turned you against us. Why?
Yeah. Well, you know, they call AOC the fraud squad now, which is funny because it also includes Ilhan Omar in that, which is hilarious because even Ilhan Omar.
They really only have issue with her and Ayanna Pressley on Israel. The other two, they're totally fine with. So to like we hate AOC, so we're going to throw the whole squad under the bus.
Not true. I've been watching Jimmy. Jimmy always goes to this picture of the full squad standing and smiling with Nancy Pelosi to prove that they're all complicit. So,
what the fuck? They have to work together. What are you talking about?
No. He wants to force the vote thing, right? So he accuses them.
Good luck getting that without having some cooperation with the speaker, but whatever.
Yeah, he accuses them of basically just wanting to have breakfast with AOC and doing
have brunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy's just a sexist idiot. Fuck him.
Yeah. See, that's one of the things is that one thing that definitely I would say I found that with a lot of this kind of stuff is that, you know, in the span of the 21st century in American politics, for most of the political eras, it did seem to me to be the people like John McCain and George Bush and stuff that were actually doing the most to advance humanity abroad. I found the Kerry line and the Obama line to be really disappointing on that kind of stuff. But it would be really good if we could have an equal number of, people left of center and right of center that are hawkish. You know, it seems to me like in America, especially, it's the Republican Party where their natural sort of position was to be hawkish throughout the Cold War and everything. And that the Democrats, after, I guess, around JFK or whatever, went to be more of a détente-focused, diplomacy-focused sort of emphasis. But, obviously Bill Clinton, though, did intervene in former Yugoslavia, and I think that was really good. But it's the sort of thing that it sucks how the problem with that is it doesn't even matter really which side it is, whether it's the left or the right in American politics that's hawkish, because if the other one isn't, then what it means is that if you ever lose an election or your party loses an election, then you're never going to be able to stay the course. That's the other issue with that, that it's like a divisive sort of thing or whatever. But
I think a big part of the problem is I have some extremely high standards at this point, so I'm always kind of destined to be disappointed. No matter really who gets elected, there are going to be operations carried out to some degree, but they're not quite to the scale that I would like them to be. And I mean, even with some easy home runs, they don't go for it. They're terrified. Now, again, a lot of it has to do with internal politics. Let's say that Trump had won a second term, hypothetically. You really have to wonder what he would have done. Would he have gone all out? Would he have just been like, well, I don't need to get reelected again? So maybe he would have been a loose cannon. He would have done a lot of things we didn't agree with and maybe done some stuff we agreed with. I don't know. I really don't know. It's tough to say because, we had the Iran deal, obviously, but you could qualify Obama's second term as being more hawkish. Granted, his first term was terrible. I mean, his first term pleased nobody, basically, to the point that pretty much all the progressives that he had riled up against McCain left Obama after those 4 years. They wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
So I would characterize his second term as being more hawkish. So, but I mean, like, that's a long time to wait for things to get done.
Yeah.
And there are very pressing situations happening right now. And honestly, I'd say for the most part, we technically are in a better place right now than we have been. So I really can't complain too much, but it's just the rhetoric of it. I have a feeling that we are not going to engage in any blind diplomacy with Iran, but just them kind of floating out the possibility of it does have me on edge, and it does kind of normalize this idea in the minds of a lot of people that, like, oh yeah, diplomacy is good. Diplomacy with Iran, good. It be good. And that's the way they think, and that's the way they're going to think for a very long time. And they don't get the full context of what's happening. But I do think that we have a number of hawkish people in the administration. We've got Blinken. Biden used to be hawkish. I think he still is behind closed doors. He just can't say it as much as he used to. And he kind of has to cloak everything. I mean, even Blinken I was listening to, he had to kind of cloak him being pro-American in this very, woke, these woke talking points of like, well, I'm pro-America, but I'm still critical of America. So don't get it wrong. And it's like, okay, fine. I guess that's acceptable.
Yeah.
As long as you're pro-America, though, because once you're not pro-America, then you really have nothing going for you.
Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah, I will say I gotta go to bed pretty soon, but it's been good talking with you and everything.
Did you want to tell the Ronnie Akalik story that we discovered today?
Oh,
that was hilarious.
I don't have the screenshots of it.
It doesn't matter.
Basically, because she's like and now I don't pay that much attention to her, but she's basically a water girl for Bashar the Butcher, right? Like she takes the side of the regime.
Oh yeah,
in Syria.
She's been to Damascus.
She's been to Damascus. She uploads YouTube videos and stuff saying how like hands off Syria, that kind of shit.
She got like a royal tour of Damascus.
Oh, so she got the Tulsi treatment. Okay.
Yeah, she and Blumenthal and all those scumbags.
Yeah. So back in 2013, though, she tweeted out how, and I believe it was a Guardian article or something, talking about how Bashar the Butcher was barrel bombing civilians in Syria, and she was outraged about it.
I'm amazed the Guardian would publish that in the first place.
Yeah.
But the Guardian, granted, it was 2013 Guardian, so you never know.
Yeah. And then you compare it to today, where she's all smiles with the regime, basically. Just
it's what a fall from grace, really.
Fall from grace. Yeah, she descended into the abyss. I mean, it's basically like she descended into the abyss, and then she like had one of those cyberpunk glitches where she fell through the floor of the abyss and like just goes down and down and down, and then you have to restart your game. That's how far down she went. Like it was not even programmed. It wasn't even a program part of the abyss. That's how far down she went. So
yeah, no, it was just funny. It was like, wow, you have to be kidding me. That happens with a lot of these people. It happened to Glenn Greenwald. He used to be in favor of the Iraq War.
Oh, right. That's true. That's incredible. I forgot about that.
It happens to a lot of these people. I think that they're in favor of something and then they feel betrayed. So they need to like spend the rest of their lives speaking out against America.
Stop betraying me. Like if I get a soundboard, we definitely have to have that "Stop betraying me" line. Stop betraying me, Steven. Where it's greatest freak out ever 2.
That is the best greatest freak out, as we've said.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's amazing. Amazing. That one, is it the one with the vacuum, or is that episode 7?
I don't think it's the one with the vacuum.
No, it's not the one with the vacuum.
That's the one where he's sitting at the computer.
No, he's sitting at the computer in this one too. Always shirtless, of course. This is from 2009. That was already 12 years ago. That's crazy. Those guys. Yeah. Stop betraying me. I mean, like the cover picture of it is Steven yelling at a video game. They've got to be doing it as a shtick now. Oh yeah, it's greatest freak out 7 is the one with the vacuum where he's like, "Mom, this vacuum sucks," and then he breaks the vacuum. It's like I don't know about you, but personally, I'd rather a vacuum sucked than it not sucked. But
womp womp.
Yeah. Wait, Kevin, you need to get Waffle Pone himself on here for an interview. Yeah, Jack hasn't uploaded anything in a year. I doubt he would come on a channel this small, but I wonder if he even still reads his channel emails, like for business inquiries. I mean, I guess it couldn't hurt to shoot him an email and be like, that'd be interesting, because I think a lot of people want to know if it's real or fake. But even if he says it's fake, is that going to clear up anything? If he says it's real, is that going to clear up anything? Because if it was fake, of course he would say it was real. So I don't know. I think
I have a couple small announcements. These are positive. So in case people are feeling down about the state of the world, this should hopefully lift your spirits. Reportedly, full U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan by May, quote, off the table, according to Vox. Oh, wow. So there's an example of our country moving in the right direction. So I think that if Trump actually got a second term, he probably would have seen that through, and to like kind of salvage his legacy, maybe to be remembered as doing something that he thought people wanted. and it's not happening now. But speaking of Glenn Greenwald, I don't know if you saw, Kevin, Glenn Greenwald, quite possibly one of the most hated people in the world right now, got absolutely shat on all day today.
I did not see that.
Did you? It was trending. It was like the number one trend. It was the funniest thing. Okay, let me explain this.
Yeah. Go for it.
He did this whole thread complaining about millennials and Gen Zers coming out as LGBT. So Glenn's like, which is weird because Glenn is gay, but so they got a token gay to speak out against the other gays and the trans people. And so he cited.
Oh, so he's Rave Dubin.
He's at Rave Dubin levels right now. Okay, so he has this tweet. It is so fucking funny. Finally, as famed lesbian Katie Herzog, I don't even know who that is, notes, there are now among millennials and Gen Z more people identifying as trans than lesbian. She has previously argued that masculine girls are now encouraged to identify as trans, causing a decrease in the lesbian population. And of course, he just cites an article. He doesn't actually cite any reasons for that, but the stats that he included were wrong.
Oh, what?
And basically, so they show the lesbian. So you have lesbian population of millennials, so born 1981 to 1996, 0.8% of the population. Gen Z, so 1997 to 2002. Whoa, Gen Z is tiny. What's the next gen?
Wait, I was thinking people born in like 2006 were Zoomers. Wait,
they must be something else. We'll have to look that up.
What comes after Z? You know,
they'll have to start, back at A, I guess. But
Gen A.
But so basically, it rose to 1.4%, and then transgender. Now, keep in mind, transgender includes trans people of both transitioning genders. 1.2 to 1.8. So it's already a completely lopsided, disingenuous piece of shit graph. But so this graph shows the lesbian population drastically increasing in just a matter of years. And Glenn Greenwald's complaining about a decrease in the lesbian population because of some supposed conspiracy to, I don't know, to erase femininity? ? Transgenders are genociding lesbian. People went off on him all day. Your own graph proves you wrong.
So he got accused, I guess, of being like a TERF or something, or
basically. And it's just like, dude, what are you even talking about? Like, it's so weird because he's the kind of guy to flip-flop on this issue all the time. Where 1 minute he in pro-Russian interests, he used to complain about artwork that depicted Putin and Trump making out for, just to kind of show how, they were butt buddies. And he would say, that's homophobia. That normalizes homophobia.
Oh yeah. I had people say that to me too, back like with the meme page and stuff, that it was homophobic to basically imply that Trump and Putin were like, basically in bed together, that kind of thing. And it's like,
but when you say people are in bed together, it doesn't even matter the genders involved.
It literally doesn't. And yet these are the same people that view the U.S. criticizing Putin for the torture camps of gay people in Russia as basically aggressing upon Russian sovereignty, right? So
he used to complain about that, but now he's going down this road where he's complaining. And then basically you had everybody come out. Michael Tracy, Ronnie Akalik, they're complaining about identity politics gone wild. And it's like, dude, you were wrong. Just own up to you were wrong. You were wrong. You cited very disingenuous, biased statistics that make no sense and are useless in this debate. And they always try to bring this up. Like, more people are coming out and identifying as this. Yeah, probably because it's a lot more socially acceptable now. I'll tell you this. They try to treat it like this epidemic. They'll treat it like there's a trans person on every street corner. Do you even know a trans person personally?
Used to. Used to work.
There you go. You knew like one. So like most people do not elect for this lifestyle because it comes with a lot of hardship. Basically, it's every moment of your life you're struggling for validation. You're struggling to be accepted as yourself around other people. Not to mention, it's hard for you to even accept who you are.
Yeah.
So to act like, oh my God, this is like, he's basically trying to act like it's a new trend. Like everyone just wants to be trans for the hell of it. There are barely any trans people. They don't exist in great numbers. They just don't.
I guess the implication is that if you fast forward 30 years, 80% of society is going to be transgender, which is comical, right? So
no. most people just don't feel like that. Most people don't have gender dysphoria. Most people like take some like we'll just say I'm the average person, didn't even think about their gender for most of their life.
Yeah.
They just were themselves. They just existed. It didn't even cross their mind to, oh, what if I was somebody different? Well, I wasn't, so it didn't work out that way. But I don't know. Sometimes I'll see these posts that are like, actually, masculinity is good. It's always some guy with like, who looks like those reply guys with the shades and the goatees.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like how masculinity is being lost. I just always want to remind these people that at one point during their development as a fetus, they were a girl. And that's why they still have nipples. Oh, masculinity's great. You were a girl. Sorry to tell you. Hope that doesn't destroy your ego for life.
Oh,
but
man.
yeah, Glenn Greenwald got roasted. He's such a token gay. He really is. And people loathe him for it. He's probably going to go on Tucker Carlson and complain about how people on Twitter were mean to him. Oh, poor Glenn. And then I saw these other people who were like, they're more of the liberal persuasion. And they were saying like, oh, Glenn Greenwald, back in the day, he used to be good. And then people would argue like, no, he always had this right-wing populist streak. And then I saw this guy come in and it was like, yeah, starting to feel like all those things that maybe we thought were good about Glenn Greenwald, he was really just opposing interests contrary to the United States. And I was like, yep, bingo, you got it. But I mean, I see these people promoting still, even in the midst of all this, they're promoting Greenwald's work with Snowden. Really?
Oh, wow.
That's cringe. That's not good.
Yeah, Snowden. Oh, wow. I mean, what do you even say to that? So
that's fucking. This Reese guy is a good dunker. He should make a channel or something. Yeah, man, I'll think about it. I'm also thinking of doing a show, maybe. I don't know. I'll get around to it at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you get around to it, I'll like promote your channel and stuff.
Finally, I'm gonna make it to 100 subs, just like Kevin said.
Yeah, 100 subs. That's right.
Snowden is what a lot of people know Greenwald for. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I didn't see it, but I know that they made that movie about Snowden, and
yes, that's Citizen 4.
Greenwald was in it briefly. Yeah. Not Greenwald himself, but an actor, obviously. But,
what a mess. What a total mess.
Yeah, complaining about surveillance. Like, it's kind of amazing because basically people are doing the same thing now. They think that there's some overreach because the FBI wants to keep an eye on incel groypers and make sure they don't shoot up any more, national monuments or anything. and people are complaining about. I love how the people complaining about big tech are in favor of Russia and Iran.
Yes. And
completely undermines everything they have to say, pretty much. But
absolutely.
They're complaining about surveillance, and they'll bring up like the Constitution, and it's first off, they don't. Why would they? They don't support the country. But they'll bring up the Fourth Amendment. Here's the bad thing about citing the Constitution, folks. The Fourth Amendment prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. If you can make a case for why a search is reasonable, the Fourth Amendment doesn't matter. I think that monitoring for terrorist activity is completely reasonable. I don't think that that's wrong at all. And I certainly wouldn't regard it as some horrible abuse of your privacy. They're still going on about it. They still think that, like, oh God, like they treat it like we live in some police state, when meanwhile they simp for every police state. It is absolutely wild. And I have no tolerance for it whatsoever. They are so all it is. First off, they don't care about this issue. They are only writing this narrative because it's popular among conservatives to hate on big tech right now. So you have some of these more typically left-wing anti-interventionists like Michael Tracy, like Ronnie Akalik, like Glenn Greenwald. They'll jump on that bandwagon and try to steer it in the way of being an anti-American narrative altogether. It's just another chance to criticize the United States. I cannot say this enough. Be very critical of anyone criticizing the United States for any reason. Really examine that person and where they're coming from. Is it a good faith criticism? Is it a criticism that is meant to better the country? Or is it a criticism that is meant to go against the interests of the country and ultimately bring it down and make it subject to overwhelming adversarial force? That is what's happening right now in real time. So forget what Glenn Greenwald did in 2013. It doesn't fucking matter. Look at what he's doing right now. He's doing the exact same thing. The man hasn't changed. You know, people will say like, oh, he betrayed the liberals and he's right wing. It doesn't matter what his personal politics are. His political stance is anti-American. Full stop. That's it. And that's what I would conclude our political conversation with. It doesn't matter if you're left wing or right wing. We debate them all the same. It matters if you are pro-Western power or against it. That is all that matters.
So now that Greenwald's basically canceled by everybody, you think there's a chance I could get him on for an interview, you know, to explain himself and stuff? Like, you think he might come on? I'd be interested to talk with him. I mean, like, we have people that are honestly more anti-American than him come on the show, like, you know, Uncle Thomas, for example. So, you know,
wildly anti-American.
Yeah. Maybe he would do it. Who knows? Like, basically, that's one thing. If there's anybody that people want me to reach out to, send me DMs and stuff, because I will email people, but it's a small channel. They probably won't come on, but we'll see what happens. But I'd be interested to talk with Glenn Greenwald. Reese, if you had one question for Glenn Greenwald, what would you ask him?
Oh, man.
Or a couple questions. Just what would you ask him if you were able to?
That's a tough one.
Like, it seems like he's somebody who used to be somewhat, I guess, liberal, and now he's somebody who shills for an objectively far right petrol state, right? So,
I mean, he's an opportunist. So I would question. I'd probably ask him something of the sort of, basically what I was just saying then. Like, how can you possibly justify consistently taking the sides of objectively authoritarian and totalitarian regimes, but then you're complaining about political censorship in Western nation. You're not complaining about it anywhere else, though. You have a very specific slant. You make mountains out of molehills, and you constantly downplay the massive issues of our time. And it is abundantly obvious to everyone that's what's happening. He actually said in that thread, which is so funny. So he says, Glenn Greenwald, clearly the massive increase in Americans self-identifying as LGBT, an increase due overwhelmingly to more bi. He put that in quotes. To more bi. So he's throwing shade on whether or not people are bisexual. Fuck you, Glenn Greenwald, bigoted piece of shit. And trans self-identifiers.
How maybe bisexual people don't exist. So maybe.
Well, that's he was somewhere else in this thread, but basically it's kind of this idea like they'll throw it out there that if somebody identifies as bi, I'm bisexual. It doesn't matter. But let's say you're bisexual and you are in a heterosexual relationship. They'll try to kick you out of the community and say, well, no, you're not really. You're just another straight person. And that's what's happening here. There's going to be a lot of people who are technically bisexual. And a lot of them are not even going to be open about it because they're going to live, relatively normal, normal lives. They'll be married. But no, they are technically bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
And you have more people coming out about that because back in the day, you really couldn't come out about that. So he says more bi in quotes and trans self-identifiers. Okay. Yeah. Not like there's a medical process. No. Just self-identifiers. It's partially, maybe the people identifying don't have ready access to a community that cares about that sort of thing or the healthcare to get a personal doctor like that. Glenn, I thought you were in favor of healthcare. What happened? Apparently not. Is partially a function of increased social acceptance. It's partially, but that's clearly not the only factor. And I doubt it's the primary one. Of course. So that is Glenn Greenwald straight up saying he doubts that social acceptance is the primary factor why more people are identifying as bisexual or trans or whatever. So what is it? Oh, it's a conspiracy. I see. What is the purpose of this conspiracy? People are saying, why is bi in scare quotes, Glenn? God damn it.
Yeah.
Why is the correlation here? Trans people go up, lesbians go down, and not bisexual people go up, lesbians go down. Both are equally valid ways of reading the graph. In fact, the jump in bisexuals from millennials to Gen Z is even higher. Yeah, and he didn't talk about that at all. He only was fear-mongering about trans people.
Man, we got a question from Braden. He says, I'd ask him, why would you criticize the American establishment but shill for a homophobic establishment, yet you're a homosexual? I think that's the best question. I know what his answer would be, but I would just love to ask him that for the public record.
Even fucking Eurovision has criticized Russia's homophobia.
That's actually true. That's
so
true.
Why can't Glenn Greenwald
and contracts, and even they were willing to basically be shut out and lose money to do that. So,
but Glenn Greenwald, public homosexual and Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, can't. Instead, he treats criticism of the Russian regime as homophobia.
Yeah.
Fucking unbelievable.
Well, and you know what? I think it's actually worse with Glenn, because Glenn is somebody who has demonstrated that he's somebody who actually does care about the issue. Like, it'd be one thing if he said, well, I don't really focus on my own sexuality or whatever. It's not really a big deal or whatnot. But no, Glenn Greenwald has actually spoken out quite a bit against Jair Bolsonaro, the leader of Brazil. Now, Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil, I believe, or at least he has.
Yeah.
So he is actually against homophobia. However, on Russia, he defends the homophobic leader. So for him, what he's basically signaled there is that Brazilian homosexuals have dignity and Russian homosexuals don't. So
yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, honestly. And well, here's the thing: if America had an adversarial relationship with Brazil, which we very well could if we didn't have Venezuela and Cuba to deal with, they very well could, not be as useful in their position, and then we'd come to blows over something else.
Well,
Glenn would be criticizing them. Or he would be shilling for them. Right?
No, I don't think he would, because he lives in Brazil. I think he'd still be, I think for 100%, if America was against Jair Bolsonaro, but Bolsonaro was still homophobic, he'd be critical of Bolsonaro because he lives in Brazil. But
I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. I don't know.
I think
if America opposes someone, he'll be in favor of them.
Maybe. I think for him, he's more selfish than anything else in that sense. It's the same way that you'll have people who say, "Oh no, I do care about women's rights," but but we're talking about Afghanistan now, not America, man. It's those people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Wait.
Pretty freaking ridiculous.
Wait, we got a comment here just before we go offline.
Uh-oh.
Ganzik, if the government legalizes pedophilia, the FBI won't do anything anymore? What? I like Arthur's response.
Oh, dear.
What? I wonder what Ganzik has to say to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. What? Like, I like this idea that the FBI, because you really did get that sense in the debate that I had with Daniel, that the FBI basically just exists to go after pedophiles and to go and create terrorist organizations and then basically get people to join and then arrest the people who join it, which is funny. But in reality, the FBI actually does a hell of a lot. Like, they work on like credit fraud. They do all kinds of shit. Like, a lot of people, they just hate the FBI for partisan reasons, which is funny because the FBI now is seen as like a left-wing organization where because that's what Daniel said. Because he said that the FBI, well, they never
investigated Trump. Oh, give me a break.
Yeah, he said they always go after the right-wing militias and they never went after Antifa, which isn't true, but it is true that they've gone after the right wing more recently. But I would argue that that's because a lot of these like left-wing Antifa type people, they don't use guns for the most part. A lot of them are squeamish about guns. Like, one thing that really pisses me off about people like Vosh is how they're pro Second Amendment, not because they believe in like the idea of the American Constitution. They just want the left to do the same shit that the right's doing, like with that kind of stuff. But,
yeah, good luck. It's probably not going to work.
But, yeah. So
this is like, I'll have to send you that. This is like one of. Okay, so this thread is wild, man. It is one of the I can see why it trended because he's okay. I'm sorry to return to this, but Glenn Greenwald said there's been a huge explosion in the number of Americans identifying as LGBT. Close to 1 out of every 5 Gen Z identifies, 17%. That's more than a full increase from Gen X, 4%. Well, yeah, they were a lot less open then. And then some people just get settled into their way. But almost all of the increase comes from those identifying as bi or trans, not gay or lesbian. I can throw out some theories, Glenn. That's because bi and trans includes both sexes, as opposed to gay and lesbian. So I guess he's trying to play the card of like, oh, I'm a gay man, so this is gay erasure for there to be bisexual people. Yeah, no, he says it here. Of Americans now claiming, quote, bi identity. He's scared.
I wonder.
He's real scared of those bis.
I wonder when I wonder, I haven't looked into it enough. I wonder what his opinion, I can probably guess his opinion on the Uyghur genocide in China is. Because there's
not a good one.
Yeah, because there's a chance that he would sooner officially recognize a genocide against lesbians perpetrated by transgender people than he would a genocide against Uyghurs perpetrated by the CCP. Think about it.
It's ridiculous. I wanted to give a shout out to Stefan in the chat.
Oh,
he said, personal update. I'm now working for an Israeli think tank focusing on terrorism and international relations. Big up to Stefan.
Whoa.
Way to go, my man.
So they're going to say that you're like a deep state shill.
For Israel.
For Israel. Yeah, that you're selling out.
That's double bad right
there.
That
you're selling out America for Israel. That's what they would say. That's what they would say. I know it for sure. Like if those guys were to come into the chat right now, they would accuse you of working for the deep state. They would accuse you of supporting Israel, and they would quote unquote accuse you of being Jewish. That's what they would do. As if it's a crime. I mean,
yeah. I'll finish this real quick and then we can go off.
Yeah.
Of Americans now claiming quote unquote bi identity, the vast majority of them in long-term relationships are in opposite sex relationships, 33%, rather than same-sex ones, 3.7%. So 10 times more people who identify as bi live in hetero-appearing relationships than gay/lesbian ones. I mean, even Shuanhead owned him on this.
Oh, really?
By saying something along the lines of, well, yeah, it's easier to date in a straight dating pool. Like, it just is. It just by the nature of humanity, that's easier to do. You're more likely to make that work out. But here's the thing. You can have, to be a bisexual is not to be like 50-50 necessarily. You'll find people like that. You also find people who have a preference that is massively biased in one direction or the other. So they may as well be either straight or gay, but they are technically still bisexual. And it doesn't matter. Those people do exist. And Glenn Greenwald is in the process of actively trying to erase them from being included in statistics. Like, oh, they don't matter. They don't count. This is part of some brainwashing agenda. Maybe it's just part of young people like to experiment, try something new, and then eventually they grow up and they settle into what they actually want to do for the years to come. And that's okay. Glenn, you gay married man.
Sure.
But I guess Glenn he's one of those gays who's offended by straight relationships. You can just feel it. So he sees someone who's bisexual who might, but he's like, oh, they would be gay, but they're spending too much time with women. Oh, it's disgusting. Stop it. He's a joke, man. He's such a joke.
Oh, man. We got Stefan. He says, I've been accused for years by the Kremlin Kylers of being a Hasbro troll. Yeah, no, my meme page has actually been accused of that too. So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So big ups to Stefan. That's awesome. You're everything that the enemies of freedom despise. So,
yeah, no, keep up the good work, man. We could use those international relations, especially at this time when they're kind of up in the air a little bit.
Yeah.
But then again, Biden says some things that are concerning. But I heard just today, and I think that we're probably going to cover this on the next stream, but when Blinken was addressing the UN, he brought up Israel and said he basically said, like, you guys have a blatant anti-Israel bias. What's up with that? So that's our Secretary of State right now. I'd say that that's a step in the right direction in a lot of ways.
Yep. No, absolutely.
I will say about the UN thing, I do have some clips from it. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to react to Maduro because he was speaking in Spanish. I tried to translate it, but it was kind of a futile effort.
Yeah.
And he talked for like 10 minutes. I didn't feel like going through all that. But whatever. The main point is that he spoke. What he said really didn't matter. It was a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say for the moment.
Well, if you got any closing remarks or anything, feel free. Otherwise, I gotta go to bed now. So,
no, I feel like we covered a lot. I feel like in a lot of ways, we're taking some dubs, just overall. And there's some areas that I'd like to see more progress on. But I'm generally enjoying watching the meltdown of a lot of these people who were darlings of the left at one point and now have kind of become right-wing crackpots. And Twitter flaming Glenn Greenwald was honestly one of the funniest things. It was the funniest thing that happened since they got AOC to stop endorsing Ronnie Akalik, basically.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, I got to go to bed now, but thanks for coming on. So have a good night, everybody. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I do daily premieres and daily streams. I often do a lot of debates as well. And we've got a show with Reese every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Pacific time called Ghoul Gang Rising. Episode 3 is in a few days, so that'll be fun.
The fire's rising.
Yeah, that's this one right there. That's the
there we go.
For it. I also noticed you changed your profile picture over on Twitter. So
Arthur sent me something. He might have sent it to you too, but if not, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, no, it looks cool. Anyway, if you want to support me, check out my Facebook, Twitch, Minds, Twitter, all are linked in the description below. And if you want to financially support the channel, you can check out my Ko-Fi, PayPal, and Patreon. Big ups to all the existing patrons. And once we hit $500 a month on Patreon, I'll be doing 2 videos a day in addition to streams. So that's everything I got for you. And have a good night, everybody. Stay based.
Buenas noches.